Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, the first in our special population series, Employment Services for Aging Veterans. Thanks for being here. My name is Maddie Goldstein. I'm the Program Assistant at National Coalition for Homeless Veterans, or NCHV, and together with our partners at Advocates for Human Potential, we make up the National Veterans Technical Assistance Center. Before we get underway, I'd just like to go over a few logistics. I have the slide. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for you to access about 24 hours after it's over. You can communicate with me if you are having technical difficulties through the chat box on your GoToWebinar panel or through email. You should have received my email in any of the registration pages, so you can just dig that up. All participant lines are muted, so you will be unable to ask questions over your phone. On the GoToWebinar dashboard, there's a tab that says questions where you can submit them typed, and we will leave time at the end for Q&A. After the webinar, you will receive an email with the link to the recording, the slides, and the post-webinar survey. The post-webinar survey will pop up immediately after the end of the webinar today, and we would appreciate it if you took a minute to complete the survey to help inform us so we can continue to bring you the voices and information relevant to your work with veterans. Today we have two great guests. I'm pleased to introduce Carol Salter and Kim Elvin. I will give their intros right now because I think they'll kind of be speaking, giving the same presentation, so I'll just do them both up front. Carol is the Assistant Vice President for Workforce Solutions and the National Director for SCSEP, or Senior Community Service Employment Program, and is responsible for providing technical assistance and training to all Easter SEALs workforce development programs in over 40 locations in the U.S. Her expertise lies in the development of relationships with national-level employees and coordination of employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities, older workers, veterans, and other job seekers as barriers to employment at the local level while providing oversight and administration at the national level of workforce development projects. She is responsible for establishing relationships with local WIOA boards, AJCs, and community service providers to establish wraparound services for job seekers with various barriers to employment. Her 30-plus years of experience in the field of finding jobs for individuals with barriers to employment makes her uniquely qualified to work with RVSOs as we seek to help veterans find jobs. Welcome, Carol. And Kim is an honorably discharged United States Navy veteran with 26 years of experience in the nonprofit arena. Kim made the transition from the Navy to Easter SEALs, New Jersey in 1991 as an entry-level resident counselor in a transitional housing program for women and children. In 1993, Kim became a certified social worker in New Jersey. Throughout the years at Easter SEALs, New Jersey, Kim held the position of youth counselor, case manager, assistant coordinator, and director. Kim has worked with many different populations and programs. She's currently the director of Easter SEALs New York, Military and Veteran Services, and the CSEP program. Kim continues to utilize her experience and skills to educate staff, participants, community providers, and employers. Kim has extensive experience in program management, staff development, public speaking, and fundraising. So we're really glad to have such knowledgeable people on the webinar today to provide us some insight on this topic. So without more from me, I'm going to turn it over to Carol.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, your audio sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm so glad that all of you are with us today. As it was mentioned, I do work with a lot of different populations, and Easter SEALs does people with disabilities, veterans, just about anybody who has a barrier to employment. But today, for all of you that are on this webinar, we want to talk specifically about the older population of veterans. And if I could get this slide to move forward. We did this during practice session and now it's not working. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay. Got it now. All right. So we are going to talk about supporting the older veteran in their employment goals today. First of all, I want to show you this real touchy. This slide here, we just want to say that there are a growing number of veterans who are age 50 and older. For any of you who don't know, there is an age discrimination law on the books, and it supports people who are 40 years and older, because we do know that there is age discrimination out there in employment land. But the people that we're talking about today are those who are about 55 and older that we are serving. We know that there's a lot of individuals from Vietnam era war and older that are still needing employment in the community, and we want to address their unique needs. So some of our learning objectives here, we want to talk about the skills that veterans bring to businesses, because it is up to us to sell those skills to the businesses that we're working with. And we're going to evaluate stereotypes and what we have to fight against sometimes when we're talking about working with an older population. And then I want to give you some resources that will be available to you to use in all of your local areas. We want to understand the demographics and be acquainted with those challenges, and talk a little bit about some of the disabling conditions that you might meet in the veterans that you're serving also. So here we're looking at veterans by period of service. There's a growing number of veterans. If you see in the red, the 51% of all veterans are from the Vietnam era, World War II, Korean. Not so many more of those are the World War II and Korean War veterans are looking for employment, but we still have a lot coming in from the Vietnam era. We're also including the Gulf War era and then other service periods. We're talking about also the individuals who are all of our service eras. Sorry, my mind just went blank. I do want to show you a demographic here of, stop rolling again. There, the demographic overview of mature job seekers who are 50 years and older. It might seem to you intuitive that the participant rate for older workers would have declined the fastest, but actually it's just the opposite is happening. As our whole workforce is growing older and people are working longer and longer, we can see that even ages 75 and older are working more in the workforce than they ever used to. The brown is that oldest age cohort. We're finding that there's a lot of individuals that are staying in the workforce longer. Many reasons for that. They can't, maybe some of their pension plans have been dried up, or their Social Security, they just can't live on what they used to live on. And then, of course, all of you who are working with homeless veterans, they may not even have access to those kinds of funds. So we are wanting to do whatever we can in our programs to help them find the jobs that they need so that they can stay self-sufficient in their communities. Here we're looking at, these are statistics from April 2016, that non-veteran participant rate in the civilian workforce is 65.5%, where Vietnam era and older veterans have a participation rate of 25.6%. This is a huge gap that we're looking at, and while we see more statistics coming out saying that the unemployment rate of veterans is getting better, and it is, this is still a huge gap. I mean, these statistics are only 1 year old, and what we want to do is make our the people who have served our country, we want to have them at least equal to the civilian workforce as we move through our goals. So let's look at the stereotypes of older veterans that we do work with, we often think that they don't have any transferable skills, and even some of the veterans that we work with in our programs, that we'll talk to them and say, well, what I used to do, I used to shoot people, so how can how can that transfer over into working with individuals that in the competitive market today? And we have to remind them of some of the skills that they executed while they were in their service, for instance. And I know Kim might be able to join in here and give you a few ideas too about the fact that they may have supervised many people in their ranks, and they may have taken care of equipment. There's a lot of things that they have done that can transfer over into the workforce.
I would agree, Carol. And a lot of times it's getting employers and the veteran themselves to understand those transferable skills. Most veterans do have leadership skills. You learn those in boot camp. So it's a great transition to get people into management positions, entry level. The longer they've been in the military, they might have advanced leadership skills for more senior level placements. And just working with equipment. I had a bank come to me once and said they wanted veterans to work as tellers, but they had fears that they wouldn't be able to handle the finances and the cash flow. And so it's just reminding the veteran and the employer that this veteran at 19 years old was responsible for multi-million-dollar equipment for personnel, so that, transferring to a bank teller is not too far-fetched if you understand that this veteran has the skills that they learned in the military, and they are transferable.
Yeah, thank you. And what about, we hear a lot about, especially older veterans, that, well, and especially if they're homeless, well, they must be connected with alcohol and drug abuse. There is a national household survey on drug abuse that reports that among nearly 30 million veterans age 18 and older living in the United States, only 7% of males and 2% of females have a level of alcohol use that would make them consider them to be alcoholic or drug addicts. So that is a stereotype of a veteran that is just not true, and we need to let employers know that if that subject comes up, or if we have an opportunity to provide training to the employer. How about post-traumatic stress? Now, that has been such a big deal over the radio ever since the post-9/11 wars, that everybody coming back has post-traumatic stress, or people that, it's just something that is in the foremost mind of all of the employers that we're working with. But we have some statistics from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs that the VA healthcare reports that 29% of veterans with post-traumatic stress many of them are, of the veterans, 29% have post-traumatic stress, but many of those are very minor situations. They're not severe. 92% of veterans have at least a high school diploma or higher, compared with 85% of the population of the civilian workforce. And again, that comes from the Census Bureau information. So we have to fight all of these stereotypes when we talk to the veterans themselves, as well as to the employers. Oops. We do have unique challenges for veterans who have disabilities. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but sometimes they have traumatic brain injuries or post-traumatic stress or other hidden disabilities. It might interest you that when I talk to people about veterans coming back who have disabilities, these are the top two things that come up that people think of when they think of disabilities. But the number one disabling condition of veterans coming back from post 9/11 and other veterans also are tinnitus. That's the number one disability that it affects their hearing because of the blasts that they've been around. So TBI and PTS, they're not as high as some of the other disabilities that might not affect a workplace situation as much as one might think. Veterans may have had an expectation that everything is normal once they return to the work site, and the employer may have that same expectation that everything is normal, but you can't help but be affected by life circumstances, and so we need to be aware of those challenges and help employers understand that as well as the veterans understand it. There may be difficulties in relationships with the family where you might not have existed previously, and we have to be cognizant of that and maybe work with the whole family. Anxiety and depression may have kept a veteran from seeking employment, or even that may have led to homelessness, and we want to make sure that we're dealing with those challenges as well. What can we do to help some of these, the positive life changes that can help people or any of the veterans, especially our homeless population that we're talking about today? The number one positive lifestyle is employment. They do need stable housing, and we are taking care of that both through the HVRP program and the SSVF program. But how are they going to keep that stable housing? We need to help them find employment. Regular sleep, a healthy diet, avoidance of alcohol or illicit drugs, and regular exercise can all lead to a positive lifestyle change of the veterans that we're working with. So what are some key skills that mature veterans bring to businesses? These are some of the things that I like to sell to employers when I'm talking to them. They have an accelerated learning curve. They very often, while they're on their routines in their service, they will be having to make decisions on a dime on what to do. They have leadership skills. Very flexible to work independently or in teams. Very often when I'm working with a veteran in an interview process or a practice interview, I have to encourage them to talk about the skills that they bring, because what we see a lot is that the veterans want to say that they are part of a group, they're part of a team. You know, they didn't do anything specifically that brings out what their skill set is. They want to talk about the teamwork that they did, which is fantastic, because employers right now are looking for people who will work in a team environment. But we also need them to bring out their specific skills and understand that they can make decisions on their own. And they have a variety of skill sets. Excellent performance under pressure. They have hands-on experience with technology and globalization. They've worked in other countries and understand that they can have access to different cultural experiences that can be brought into the workplace. Most of the veterans we work with have strong integrity. They're very conscious of health and safety standards, and they can triumph over adversity. They're punctual. They can work under stressful conditions. They have great communication skills, and they're good at conflict resolution because they have practiced that both in their battlefields and in their barracks, and we want to bring all of those things to an employer. Kim, did you want to add anything to this?
You know, I think you mentioned it all, but really the dedication and the loyalty, the ability to follow within the culture, but also to think outside of the box. You know, veterans can be very regimented, but they are also trained to, like you say, problem solve. So it does fit into the civilian workforce by having that ability to meld into the culture of the workforce, but also to have some, you know, to have that ability to make decisions and to be innovative, because a lot of times in the military you have to be innovative. You have to take something that's not working and make it work. So definitely veterans, especially mature veterans, bring that to the workforce.
Thank you. I'm going to share my desktop with you. I want to show you a resource that all of you can use. I'm real eager to show this to you. Let me get over here. So there's a site that you all can go to. It's called directemployers.org. It's up here in my URL, if you can all see that. Direct Employers is an association of employers who are federal contractors or subcontractors of federal contractors. Now, why this is special to you is that the Office of Contract Compliance, right up here, if you want to take a look up here on your time, the Office of Compliance tells you a little bit about it. It's through the Department of Labor, Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs. They have passed a law saying that anybody who's a federal contractor needs to be more rigorous about hiring veterans and about hiring people with disabilities. What's interesting about this is that they have to comply with the OFCCP's Vietnam-Era Veteran Readjustment Assistance Act of 1974, it's called VEVRA, and the Section 503 of the Rehabilitation Act. So that's, this one here is for veterans, and this one here is for anybody who has a disability. So OFCCP in March of 2014 stated that if you're a federal contractor or a subcontractor, 7% of all individuals you hire must be people with disabilities, and 6.9% of all individuals you hire must be veterans. So what does this mean to you as service providers? It means that you have something that these employers want. And what I want to show you is if I go back to their main site page here, at the very bottom of the page, you go to About and you go to Member Companies here, and you can see an alphabetical list of all the companies that are required to hire veterans. Now a new ruling just came out that as of March 31st, so just 2 weeks ago, they lowered the number of 6.9% must be veterans to, 6.9% to 6.4%. That's apparently because they've been doing a good job of hiring veterans. But still, 6.4% of all individuals they hire must be veterans. And if you have a veteran with a disability, then you can actually approach these employers and say, I can meet 2 of your criteria under the OFCCP review. And you might be surprised on some of the people who are in here, for like Pizza Hut, they're a federal contractor, right? FedEx. I want to give this to you so you can take a look, because if you see somebody on here, General Electric, I know Red Cross is on here, if you see somebody on here that you're already working with, then you can utilize this and say, listen, I can help you meet your benchmark requirements from the OFCCP because I have a veteran that can do this job. So I wanted to give you that resource and have you understand that this could be very important for you to be able to approach an employer on this list and say, you know, I have somebody that can help you meet these guidelines. So that's one of the sites. The other site is easterseals.jobs. So if you just put in your URL, www.easterseals.jobs, we are sharing this resource with you. This was done for us by Direct Employers Association, the website that I was just on. So this particular website, they have 2.2 million jobs right now with federal contractors. And so these are the jobs that you want to target for the individuals that you're serving. And so I'm just going to put as an example in here, in, let's say in Atlanta, right? because I know that we've got people from Atlanta. So you go down to Atlanta, Georgia, and you say, well, how many jobs with federal contractors are in Atlanta, Georgia? There's 19,752. Now, if you wanted to cut that down and say, well, I have a veteran that's looking for, let's say a warehouse. So let's just put warehouse. We won't get it too. How many warehouse jobs are in Atlanta, Georgia? There's 789 jobs in Atlanta, Georgia for it, with federal contractors who have jobs in warehouses. And so you can look right on here. Georgia Employer is one of them that's coming up a lot, LKQ Corporation. But if you click on one of those, then it gives you the job description, everything that they need to use down there, and you can also apply right here online from here. And then the employment specialist could go to LKQ Corporation and say, I just had one of my veterans apply for a job. I know that you have benchmarks under the OFCCP where you have to meet, where you have to hire veterans, and I have somebody that qualifies for your job. I wanted you to be aware of that so that you can pull up their name out of the people who have applied. So hopefully this is going to give you some information. Again, please, even though this says Easter seals, we are sharing this with you, with everybody on the call. And I thought it would be funny just to put physicists to see how many physicist jobs are in Atlanta. You never know, right? And when I did that, there's actually 11 jobs. So it could be somebody who has very maybe low skills that need to get back into the workforce. It could be somebody with a PhD. You never know. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the webinar. But again, that's easterseals.jobs, and all of you can utilize this resource. All right.
Sorry, when I switched back, it took me.
That's okay. We were on 14, I think. Yeah.
Here we go.
All right.
Okay.
So I do hope, go ahead.
I just gave you back the mouse. That's it.
Okay. All right. So I do hope that that's going to be helpful for you, that you can utilize that. So our next slide is strategies leading to successful employment outcomes. That's what we're here for today. Again, employer education. We want to talk to employers about the availability of tax incentives for hiring veterans with disabilities. We want to talk about the ADAA and reasonable accommodations and customized employment and assistive technology. So under the ADAA, just to let you know, that's the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Amendment Act. Under reasonable accommodations, most accommodations that we have seen are very simple. Just about 99% of accommodations cost less than $500. But the ADA was written in such a way that it's flexible. So if you're working with a mom and pop business, they may not be required to do the same kind of accommodations that if you were working with Raytheon, that they may need to do, you know, an accommodation that costs $5,000. A mom and pop might not have to do that because it's based on income and number of people that you have. I did want to mention that under the ADA, alcoholism is considered a disability, and however, illegal substance drug abuse is not considered a disability, and that might be interesting to you. We want to assure employers that they're not being left in the cold to deal with unknown work behaviors. When we place a person with an employer, we want to be able to do the follow-up with them. And I know that you have follow-up requirements. I often tell employers, I will not only help you onboard the right person for your job, but I will also help you offboard them if they're not working. That I want to assure them that they have an advocate as well as veterans have an advocate to continue that employment process. Want to stay in touch with them as they're working through any issues that might come up on their work site. So let me see. So when we're talking about there's your Easter sales stock job that will be in your PowerPoint that you get at the end of this. When we're talking about the tax credits that we want to tell employers about, the Returning Heroes tax credit provides incentives for businesses to hire employers, and these are decent tax credits. So if people are short-term unemployed, the veterans are short-term unemployed, 40% of the first $6,000 worth of wages, that's $2,400, can be a tax credit for employers who hire a veteran who's been unemployed at least 4 weeks. But look what happens, that if a veteran's been unemployed longer than 6 months, they can actually get up to $5,600 for those long-term unemployed veterans. And Kim, I don't know, have you used any of these tax incentives to encourage employers to hire veterans?
Our job developers do. When we go out to develop new relationships, we have utilized them, and many employers are not, aware of these tax credits, and it sometimes is a selling point to get them to be willing to start looking at veterans as a viable commodity for their workplace. So it has been helpful. It's not just educating them, getting them to open their eyes to what's available and how they can supplement their profits.
Thank you. And and in addition to the Wounded Warrior, we also have a Wounded Warrior tax credit, which is actually more than the other tax credits. So if any of the people, the veterans that you're working with are considered a Wounded Warrior, then the benefits actually go up. So if they have a service-connected disability, the employer can get a maximum of $4,800 per year for that first year. And then if they are a Wounded Warrior with a service-connected disability who have been unemployed longer than 6 months, they can actually get up to $9,600. Now again, I use this a lot when I'm approaching an employer, because sometimes they might say, well, I'm kind of on the fence of hiring them or not, and this can be something that can tip them over the other side if they're willing to fill out the paperwork, which isn't, it's not difficult, but as you learn more about the VOW Act and the tax credits, then you can also learn yourself what the paperwork is and help them to work through that. So I think one of the things that we have to do when we're working with our veterans is helping them understand the company. They're coming from an organization that has a very, meaning their service structure, that has very clear hierarchical structure. There's clear stated lines of duties. You know who your commanding officer is. You know what the path of promotion is. And in the civilian workplace, it's a lot more ambiguous than that. You may not have a clear hierarchy. So one of the things when I'm training companies on the employer side of it is to have them clarify with the veteran what those lines of communication are. But as you're working with veterans, I think that you need to encourage them to get clarification on who is your supervisor and what's the protocol. One of the things that these 5 helpful onboarding steps that I like to talk about is go online ahead of time and understand what are the goals and the mission of the company, and how does their job fit into that goal or mission of the company. and then work with the veteran to lay out a clear path for training on their job duties. What is expected of them? You know, go over the job description and find out what are the essential functions of the job, and provide an org chart for them to show who's their boss and who's their boss. And then again, the frequent check-ins, make sure that you work with them after they get a job to see if they have any issues that you can help resolve. And understand what a job accommodation is. There is an organization under Department of Labor, it's called JAN, the Job Accommodation Network. And so if you go to DOL.gov and look up JAN, it gives a lot of different suggestions for accommodations. And for our veterans, some of them that I can think of is some may have sensitivity to lights, and so in our office we hired a veteran who had a service-connected disability, and we gave her headphones. We changed the lighting in her office so that she had a lamp by her desk. We also moved her desk so that her back was against the wall and she could see people approaching through the door when they came up to see her. So her, you know, she wasn't facing away from the door, she was facing towards the door. So there's some simple accommodations that can be made if needed, and we just need to help them think through that and what that might look like. When you go to recruit employers, I would suggest that you rely less on job boards and more on in-person networking. Now again, if you go to the website Direct Employers and look for those federal contractors, that's going to give you a heads up, and then you can approach those that are in your local area. You know, get out from behind your desk. When I hire an employment specialist or a job developer, I don't expect them to be sitting behind their desk. I expect them to be out in the community looking for those jobs, attending trade shows, build relationships with your local community and vocational colleges, go speak at chambers of commerce or Rotary clubs, and take a veteran with you. Have them do a live resume. They can carry in their paper resume, but let them tell a little bit about themselves. Take one of your best veterans who's job ready out there and get them to sell themselves. Conduct informational interviews with employers. I think this is so important, not only for you to do informational interviews, but for your veterans to do informational interviews. And I will send the NCHV a list of questions for informational interviews, and they can attach that to this webinar. I meant to do that before the webinar, but I will get that out. Some questions that you can ask for informational interviews. Kim, have you ever used informational interviews when you go out?
Definitely, and it's been very helpful just to get an idea of what the employer is looking for. What we've done is actually go in during the lunch hour, meet with hiring managers, talk to them about some of the things we're discussing today. What concerns do they have about hiring veterans? What are the positives? And just have a dialogue and get to understand what, if any, barriers they might have to employing veterans, and then going through a very casual, training or discussion on the benefits, talking about stereotypes. So it's also, when we approach our employers, it's really to not just ask them for something, but to share with them our resources and what we have. So if we're going to ask them to employ our veterans, we're going to be there from the beginning, building that relationship to support them through onboarding, retention, really even starting with giving them free training and free support, even if they're not quite on board with hiring yet, but to really build those relationships. And like Carol said, getting from behind your desk and really working with employer hands-on.
So I'll give you one example. When I used to be a job developer, I drove by this one place called Nameplates. It looked like a big warehouse. And every day I drove by and I thought, well, I wonder what they do at a place called Nameplates. I couldn't grasp what kind of business they would do. So one day I decided to drop in there, and I talked to the receptionist, and I asked when your HR, I'd like to see if I can come back, schedule an appointment with your HR director so I can really learn what you're doing here in this warehouse. And the HR director was in an office behind the desk, and she actually came out and she said, well, I have time to give you a tour right now. And so she, what I found out is all those little plates on the back of your refrigerators and on your microwaves and your Dell laptops, all those little name plates that are on there, and like I'm looking at an ASUS tag for my computer right now, that's what they do. They make those, that's all they do, is they make those nameplates. And so they have silk screeners, they had designers, they had people who did the deburring if they were metal parts, they had people on their that were doing quality control, they had forklift drivers, they had packaging people, shipping and delivery. So it was a whole bunch of information there. And I was able to see the work that was being done and asked a lot of questions, what are your high turnover positions, what are you looking for? And that employer was very interested in the fact that I was interested in their business. And so she came back to me about 2 weeks later. I had left my card with her and said, listen, I need a forklift driver in our warehouse, and since you've been here and you know what we're looking for, I trust you to do to send me the people that you think will do this job. So get out there, talk to employers, find out what are their high turnover, what kinds of skills are they looking for, do they need some kind of certification. Those are the kinds of information that we look for from employers. Now I want to talk to you next about a very specific. Oh, are you guys getting feedback?
There was a slight echo, but
Yeah.
when you just asked that question, there was no echo on it.
Okay,
maybe it was
good. Don't know what happened there. So I want to talk to you about a very specific resource for older, working with older veterans here, and it's called the Senior Community Service Employment Program. Both Kim and I work on this program. We have a grant from the Department of Labor. It's funded under Title V of the Older Americans Act, and the interesting thing about this program is it's in every county, in every state in the United States. So every county that you are covering in your program has this Senior Community Service Employment Program. This employment program are for low-income individuals. Now, I would venture to say all of the individuals you're working with probably qualify for this, the income. They have to be at 125% of the federal poverty level or below, and probably 80% of the individuals in this program are at 100% of poverty level or below. They must be 55 years or older, and they must be unemployed. And in this program, we have what's called Veterans Preference. So if you have any veterans who are 55 years and older who are low income and unemployed, which most of yours are, they can be co-enrolled in this SCSEP program. Again, it's in every county in the United States. What we do is we find training for the veterans and other people who qualify for this program, but it's Veteran Preference, and that's who we're talking about today. So I'm going to specifically talk about veterans. They can go to what we call a host agency. It can be any 501c3 organization or any governmental organization. So it could also be a school district, it could be a library, anything that's funded through the federal government, state government, or local government. They can be a host agency. The veteran would go to that host agency to get work-based learning, hands-on training, an average of 20 hours a week. That can fluctuate between 15 and 24 hours a week depending on how much money that the grantee has at the local level. They are paid. This is a paid training program. And we can pay them the minimum wage, whatever's higher, federal, state, or local minimum wage. That's paid by the grantee agency. while they're learning. And that's a program, again, where you can enroll your veterans that are in the SSVF or the HVRP program can be co-enrolled in the SCSEP program. Now, while they're in the SCSEP program, you cannot count that as a placement because all of the training funds that they're getting, it's a stipend, it's a subsidized wage while they're learning, so it's not considered unsubsidized employment. But again, as long as you're providing different services, then it doesn't matter who makes the job placement, and that's our goal too in the SCSEP program, is after they get their skills upgraded and to where they can become competitively employed, we help them look for employment in the community. Now, it doesn't matter whether the SCSEP program found them employment or the HVRP program found them employment. We both get to count it as a successful placement as long as we're providing different services. So I'm going to let Kim talk a little bit about how, because she has both an HVRP program and a SCSEP program, I'm going to let her talk a little bit about how this can work.
Okay, good afternoon again. So as Carol mentioned, we provide services here in Easter Seals, New York to both populations through SCSEP and the HVRP program. We started noticing that 50% of our veterans in HVRP were also 55 and older. So we decided that it would really be good to join the two programs together and try to leverage more services, more case management, more support services. So we began co-enrolling. We found that with our mature veterans that come into our HVRP program, they might have multiple barriers to employment. They sometimes are the population that is what they call the chronic homeless. We're seeing mostly Vietnam era and 9/11, post 9/11 veterans, mostly Gulf War. So really working with them, we determined that HVRP, intended to be a shorter term program, really wasn't allowing us to give them all the services they needed. So by enrolling them through the SCSEP program, as Carol stated, they are assigned to a host agency where they can get on-the-job training while they're getting a stipend. The stipend has allowed most of our veterans who are in SCSEP to then stabilize their housing. Most of them do have some source of income, whether it be SSI, SSDI, and the stipend that they're getting from SCSEP has been enough to kind of really stabilize the housing situation. It also has allowed us to leverage the resources between both programs for support services. There are funds in SCSEP that can be used that for items such as utility arrears and rental arrears, as long as it coincides with their employment goal, that the HVRP program does not allow. So it's been a win-win. Just to give you an idea, a little example, we've also utilized both programs to hire our own veterans. In our SCSEP program, our outreach coordinator has been with Easter Seals New York for 6 years. He started off as a SCSEP participant, Marine veteran, Vietnam era, and really just had lost his way, but not sure where he wanted to go. He had been in transportation because of some medical issues, was unable to do that, came to SCSEP, and he was trained as an outreach monitor. We trained him to go out into the community, do customer service with our host agencies, and through that we were able to hire him, once we got funding, to be our Veterans Outreach Coordinator. So that's one example of how SCSEP really prepared him and helped to change his career path, because he really wasn't sure where he wanted to go. But that's when you talk about sitting down and understanding those transferable skills and fitting people into a new career path. We also, the one thing to mention that Carol talked about the host agencies, in SCSEP 50% of our host agencies actually hire. So those host agencies help to provide not only the training, but soft skills. They help to build confidence. And it's just a win-win situation, and it also provides the veteran a little bit more time. If they need more time and more training and more retraining, and career advancement.
Thank you. The other thing, too, to keep in mind is if you are a 501c3 organization, you could become a host agency, and you can have your veterans train at your host agency. Maybe a veteran wants to be a receptionist or a custodian, and you don't have that job right now, that nobody's in that job, then you could become a host agency. Our agency or whoever has the national or state grant at your local level would actually pay the wages and the workers' compensation for that veteran training at your agency. So that's something to keep in mind too. And you can get more information from Kim and I after the presentation. Now I'm going to go through the next few slides fairly quickly because they're just reference slides for you to be able to see what other, if I can get it to change here. Now it's not wanting to. It's not wanting to turn. There you go. Okay, so here's some, Easter Seals also has the National Aging Disability Transportation Center. So if you need transportation resources for mature veterans, here's a link that you can go to. Elder Care Locator, if you have people who are taking care, maybe your veterans might be taking care of elderly parents or or you have a family that's taking care of veterans, older veterans with disabilities, then you may want to go here for a resource. These will all be on your PowerPoint presentation, so I'm just covering them real quick so we can get into our question and answer session. These are all resources that you can go to. So that's the end of our presentation. I do want to open it up and have time for question and answer. And if you have any other questions, especially about the SCSEP program, who operates the program in your local area, I can get that information to you, and you're welcome to email me, and I will follow up with you on that. So we'll open it up now, if you will. Well, we won't open the lines, but we do have a list of questions that might have come up. You can put those in your Q&A box or the chat, and we'll see if we can answer any questions you have.
Yes, thank you for that, Carol. Thanks for a great presentation to both you and Kim, and just a reminder to anybody who might have tuned in late, you will get the recording of this and the slides in about 24 hours. So if you heard some great information but couldn't quite write it down, no worries. It'll be coming right into your email. We got a few questions in here. Let's see. Let me just pick. So there was a question about framing offboarding to an employer. Could you talk about how you could be helpful with offboarding?
Sure. This is Carol. I'll talk about that a little bit. A lot of employers are real hesitant to hire, especially somebody with a disability. Maybe you have a veteran with a disability, or that they're just not quite sure because they're afraid of what they don't know. And so they may be afraid of what if I have issues with this person who has a traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress. So I assure the employer that we want this to work out for them. We understand what their bottom line is and that they need a productive worker. So if somebody is, we will refer, because we do pre-screening, we will refer them somebody who we think can do the job. But if something comes up on the job site that they weren't aware of, then we can go back in and try to troubleshoot that. If that doesn't work out, and we also see that that person isn't the right fit for the job, then I will talk to the veteran and let them know that I concur with the employer that this probably isn't a good fit for either one of them, and I will help encourage them to resign from the job, and we will help them, continue to help them look for another job. So that's what I mean by offboarding. We want to take into it. Now, if it is a real discrimination suit, then of course we won't. I do remember I gave a presentation to Kmart once, and they had a whole room full of lawyers, and they said, does that mean that if we work through Easter seals, we'll never get a discrimination lawsuit against us? And I'm like, of course not. If you discriminate against somebody with a disability or because they're a veteran, you're probably going to get a lawsuit. But we can help your staff understand how not to discriminate, and then we can also be there to support the person who is not quite meeting the expectations of the job, and to get them a different job and offboard them from you.
Thank you. I had a few questions come in, so I want to make sure I raise this in the last few minutes. What about an aging veteran with a criminal background or a large gap in employment? Do you have any strategies for explaining those things in an aging veteran's background?
Kim, do you want to take this one?
Sure, Carol. Again, this is a situation that can be difficult, but it really goes back to developing relationship with employers. We have had quite a few veterans, mature veterans, who do have criminal backgrounds and do also have gaps in employment. We specifically seek out employers who are willing to work with that population. It helps, I guess, this could change from location to location, but we're in New York City, so it's a little easier than it might be in other parts of the country. But it's really, again, building that relationship with the employer, telling them that these are the barriers, but we're going to be there step by step. So we're going to help onboard, we're going to help with the training, and we're going to be there if any issues occur. We had a gentleman with a background check that we just got into a social service agency. He's doing really well there, but we gave them this thing, we pre-screened, we assured them that we weren't going to go away when we placed them, that we would be there to address any issues that came up. So it's about that relationship building.
I would also say, too, that especially if in the case of having big gaps in employment, that's where if they were enrolled in the SCSEP program where they're getting work-based learning, they can actually put that on their resume that, in the past 6 months I've been working at and we call them internships. I've been working at an internship proving my skills at this location or with this employer, whether if it's the Red Cross or whatever. So we can help through the SCSEP program close that gap.
All right, one quick question. Can a vet be co-enrolled in another nonprofit's employment assistance program? I'm guessing they're talking about at the same time with the SCSEP program? Yes.
So I can give you a really good example of that. So if you have a veteran that might have a disability, service-connected or not, they can be working with their local America Job Center with their DVOP. They could qualify for the state vocational rehabilitation program, and they can enroll with them. And they might qualify for SCSEP as well as a WIA training. And they can co-enroll in all of those programs. So we don't have, in Department of Labor, which funds HVRP, and they also fund SCSEP, they don't have any qualms in being co-enrolled in both programs or even all three, state voc rehab through the Department of Education, as long as you can show on paper that you're providing a different level of service. So SCSEP's level of service would be providing work-based learning, paid work-based learning, where you might provide work boots for them, or you might provide the job counseling, the soft skills counseling. So as long as you're providing the different things on each different grant, then all of us can count that as a successful placement.
All right. And I wish we had some great questions, and I'll try and save them. But in the last minute, I just want to say to everybody on the webinar that on our website, nchv.org, we have lots of other resources. Some of them relate to the questions that you're asking. And I saw a question about what does HVRP stand for. So that stands for the Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program. A lot of the attendees are grantees of that, but we're glad that other people are on the webinar too. You can also find more information past webinars on our website, and look forward to upcoming webinars. That website title again was nchv.org. And also remember that this particular webinar with all the resources that have been discussed will be sent out to you in about 24 hours, the recording in the slides. So if you have any further questions, Carol's email was up. You can also email me, Maddie Goldstein. My email was through all the registration pages, and it is just about 3, so I'm going to close this out there. Thank you, Carol and Kim. It's been a real pleasure hearing from you guys. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.